Well, welcome to Across the Aisle. I am former Senator Bobby Zirkin. I am here with my very good friend, Johnny Olszewski, Johnny O, as we refer to him, my power forward on our basketball team back in the day, congressman from the 2nd District. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you.
Thanks for the invite, my friend.
All right. Well, we're going to talk. We have so much to get through here today. This podcast is about, as we've talked about, reaching across the aisle, talking about bipartisanship, really talking about issues and how we kind of move beyond the hyper-partisanship that seems to be gripping politics, which I know is important to you.
Absolutely.
So let's get started.
Sure.
The first thing I want to ask you is, you and I served in the legislature together.
Yep.
Then you became our county executive, my county executive in Baltimore County, and now you're representing me in the Congress. Tell me about that arc and kind of how you saw your different roles and what you liked the best, I guess.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for doing this. These conversations are really important. I think in a world where partisanship is sort of elevated and celebrated, that having voices like yours try to bridge that divide is so critical. And I hope we can get into that with a little more detail. As it relates to your question, I feel like I've been lucky that in my now 20 or so years of public service, I feel like I've really lived a full and complete life, even though I'm just starting now in Congress. And it's been incredible to learn the legislative process. I was 23 years old when I joined you in the General Assembly and just loved learning about our state and the legislative process, both the official parts, but also how to get things done unofficially, and I think more than anything, the takeaway was the importance of those personal relationships and actually having those connections.
Yeah.
That's something that I think has followed me throughout. And then transitioning to the Baltimore County executive role, where you are responsible. I mean, you're not just pushing policy in a certain direction, but the buck actually stops with you, and you can either just respond to things or actually have something affirmative. And one of the things that was really helpful for me is I had spent 4 years out of office after 8 years in the General Assembly, thinking about the things that I would do if given the opportunity. And so that role was incredible. It was rewarding. I learned so much about myself and about leading, and really proud of the ways in which we worked with a split county council, 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans, drawing on those lessons as a legislator to do really hard things. I mean, we passed bipartisan police reform. We passed bipartisan gun safety legislation. We balanced budgets. We made historic investments in education and recreation and parks. And a lot of that was drawn from the experience, and it also was just about having good processes, engaging the public, having a good team.
Yeah.
Incredible experience. And now I get to take those lessons together and serve my community and serve my country. But it's pretty special to have served now at all 3 levels of government and in both a legislative and an executive role. I feel blessed beyond measure and incredibly lucky to do it.
Well, let me ask you this. You had amazing accomplishments, I know, as county executive, and obviously collectively we did, as I agree with you, lots of great things down in the General Assembly. Congress seems to be another issue, and not that it's your fault by any stretch. You've been there for just a couple of years. How are you finding, I guess the first general question is, how are you finding this experience? And then second of all, since from the outside it looks like it is very difficult to get anything done down there.
Yeah.
How do we change this?
Well, I don't know how much time we have, but your observation is astute. And I will tell you that unfortunately it's even worse up close. The vitriol, the partisanship, and it's something that I both think is unfortunate, but it's also something I'm actively working to change. The thing I sort of approach any institution, and Congress is just an institution of people. And if people can change, and if there's reasons to be hopeful in people, then I have to believe the institution can change, because it's just something made up of people and neighbors and friends and fellow Americans. So it is a place where it's very hard to get things done, especially in a bipartisan fashion. But
can I ask you a question? I don't want to interrupt. Why? Why is it? And I'll give you a quick story. Like when my very good friend Jamie Raskin, who I sat next to for 10 years in the General Assembly, we used to write bills on napkins, and like they're actually in the law books right now. I mean, like Jamie may not admit it these days, but he used to work with Democrats, Republicans. Mike Huff was one of his best friends down there. Like, we just were getting things done. But you look at Congress and it's like, it doesn't seem like, and I'm not saying because I'm not there, but it doesn't seem like that happens. Or if it does, it's very rare. Why?
So it is happening. I've passed a couple of bipartisan bills with Roger Williams, the Republican chair of my small business committee. I had a bipartisan bill put in the big housing package that passed. But I will say that I think the reason it doesn't happen on a large scale is that the incentive structure is skewed against that. You're almost penalized for being bipartisan in some quarters. And what I can tell you is that I've started doing these bipartisan pizza and beer gatherings with a fellow freshman Republican, Jeff Hurd from Colorado, great guy. And you would have thought that he and I invented nuclear fission by just bringing together Democrats and Republicans to talk. And so the notion being, the first time I have a conversation with you shouldn't be about how much I hate your guts or how terrible your bill ideas are, but just tell me about your family. Tell me where you're from. Why are you here? And then try to have some shared level of understanding so that we can have those disagreements, but it's rooted in some sort of mutual respect and relationship. Not Jeff, but I will say members who have replied and come or have asked about it. I think more on the Republican side, but certainly a little bit on the Democratic side. People have said, are we taking pictures? Is this off? And it's like, nope, no pictures, no press. But that's sort of the environment that we're operating in. And you see it, I think, especially when you look at social media posts, where the goal is to dunk on and own the libs, own the conservatives, take down MAGA. And look, I have very serious policy concerns on things that President Trump and Republicans in Congress have done and are doing actively to I think, hurt this country. But I also recognize that I enter those conversations as children, from my perspective, they're all children of God and they're all Americans. And so we have so much in common to start the conversation on before I go right to why I think what you're doing is problematic or challenging. And I think so many people get to DC and literally stay there, don't get home, don't touch the grass. And I think that coupled with the partisan nature of social media, the partisan nature of our elections, I think sort of feeds and it provides the wrong incentive structure and helps make it more difficult to do those bipartisan things.
I think that's right. That is a big issue. I remember, I think you came after social media had already started in politics, but when I first got there, it really wasn't a part of it. And I remember there was a story with, it doesn't matter, it was a judicial proceedings thing where all of a sudden people were voting for bills that were unconstitutional or stupid or dangerous or whatever. You're thinking to yourself, what is going on here? And it turned out it was based on people, legislators getting trolled on Facebook. And I'm like, how is it that you're just listening
driving
your vote? And it's so much worse now. I went to Bob Castley's fundraiser. Listen, he and I disagreed on a whole host of things, but I found him to be a fabulous legislator on my committee. I mean, he was, meticulous and thorough, and I really relied on him. Most of our issues weren't really partisan. And so, he asked me to come to my fundraiser. I was his chairman, and I went there, and somebody snapped a picture, and I didn't care. I mean, but man, I got
other people cared.
Oh, they're like, how can you do that? He's a Republican. He's pro-life. He's this. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not those things. What are you yelling at me for? Like, yell at him. And it just was crazy. But
the other thing that's missing, and you were so good at this when we served, is convening people to do social things. So Jeff and I do the beer and the pizza and just sort of gather, but also you used to coordinate the basketball games and just spending that social time, building those relationships and those bonds of trust. DC is also built now, and I think this changed, I believe, when Gingrich took over. Members are almost incentivized and encouraged to go home. And my understanding is that prior to that approach, that members would stay and be in shared churches and synagogues and mosques, and they would have their kids play on little league teams together. So there was truly this kinship that people had. It was sort of the Reagan Tip O'Neill, where they would fight it out all day and then go have a drink together. And I think that is largely gone. So you take away that personal connection and you marry it with these hyper-partisan incentives through things like social media. And I think that's sort of the recipe that you're seeing. And I'm hopeful that, other members see it my way and try to push back against that a little bit and change it, because I think the better solutions and the more sustainable solutions end up being bipartisan in nature, because otherwise you just have this pendulum swing back and forth where Republicans take the majority, they push through changes to Medicaid, food supports, tax changes, Democrats take over, they're going to try to do their version of the same thing versus actually trying to work together to figure out what does the vast majority of Americans want to see. I mean, there are 10 different 80% issues that we could probably pass right now if either side would allow it to come to a vote.
I think that's right.
And I think but people are so angry because we don't do that and we're dysfunctional and they see these wild swings. And I think that's part of why people are so fed up with Congress and why the approval rating for it is so low.
So let me ask you this though, because it seems to me, and I've made my views on you very clear, for many years. I think you are exactly what we need in Congress, right? When people ask, who are the folks that you would look to, there aren't that many that I can pinpoint and say, we need, 435 of those and we'd be fine. From whatever party, whether it's Democrat, Republican, right, purple, green, unaffiliated, whatever, it doesn't matter. It seems to me, looking at these last elections, that that's not what we're getting, that we're actually getting worse, that these elections are turning out crazier and crazier. And, in our own party, I'm still a Democrat. Long ago I spoke at the Democratic National Convention, but I don't recognize some of these folks who at least call themselves Democrats. I don't consider them Democrats. I consider them socialist communists. I mean, like some of these people that have just got elected. But like, how is it? And same thing on the other side. I mean, this is not like a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an American problem.
Yeah.
Right now. I guess, do you see it that way? And as a larger conversation, how do we fix this? Because this is not a good thing.
Yeah. I think we're seeing more and more extreme viewpoints from both parties, as you point out, finding their way into the quote unquote mainstream of political parties. And I think a lot of that has to do with two things. One is just the frustration with the lack of progress. And so I think people turn to whatever version of like populism or extremism people are selling to say, well, if you trust me with something different, I will deliver different results, even if it won't. But the second piece is I think you're seeing fewer and fewer people participating in these primary elections, which allows for a smaller but more vocal or active or organized component of either party to be successful in these elections. And so I think part of the solution is Congress start doing things again, as we were talking about. But the other solution is I think we revamp our election system so that we actually have people being elected with incentives to actually appeal to the broader population, to the entire district, and to govern in a way that is responsible and responsive to what people are asking for. So, for example, I'm a big believer in ranked choice voting, and I think that if we were to reframe and do something similar to like what Alaska does, right? They have everyone vote in a primary election. And if you're one of the top 4 candidates, if you can sort of get past that initial tranche, irrespective of party, everyone votes, all the parties are up, then you go to a general election and you have to garner the majority of votes, through the elimination process, through ranked choice voting. But at the end of the day, you'll have survived 2 sort of, I think, vettings of a population that's greater than just one viewpoint. And look, I'm a very proud Democrat. I don't shy away from it. But I think when it comes to elections, at the end of the day, party affiliation is a marker. It is a general values framework. I don't think anyone should ever be completely aligned with just one only perspective. But I think if we open it up, we find ways to open it up and have folks have to make the case to a broader audience, that will change our politics, I think, in a significant and I think in a positive way.
So you and I were talking about this before we started this, and we decided not to share views. And thought maybe we were on the same page. So some weeks ago, I wrote an editorial in the Sun that Alaska is the model that we need to adopt. It came from, actually, my daughter did a project at Dickinson College for a political science class that turned me on to this idea. And I mean, it's new, but I think it's amazing what they're doing, and it incentivizes, like you said, you have to moderate. You can't be a whack job and get through, because you might get through the primary, because they do the top four, I think. So 4 people get through, but then they rank choice them when the general elections rank choice. And I should be able to, look, I'm a Democrat, I should be able to, I don't even call it a primary election. It shouldn't be a primary. It should just be a preliminary election, or a first and a second election, whatever you call it. I should be allowed to vote for whoever I want to in the preliminary election, and then vote for whoever I want, and then rank choice them up in the general. I should be able to, if Larry Hogan's my guy, I should be allowed to vote for him in a primary. I'm not, I feel like, this is just my opinion, just to add on to yours, and maybe even a step further. And we talked a little bit about this, because Boyd Rutherford, our former lieutenant governor, has a lawsuit that's in the appellate court of Maryland right now, which I agree with wholeheartedly. Like, we spend state tax dollars on these primary elections for 2 private organizations. They're private organizations with private bylaws and private rules and all the rest. And they can exclude who they want or include who they want. Like, state money shouldn't be going for that. And the founders of our country never wanted us to have this kind of, factional type of a system that we've been locked into. So I agree.
Yeah, counterpoint to Boyd's lawsuit, at least, is that we have same-day registration in Maryland now. So if people wanted to change parties and vote in the Republican primary or the Democrat, they can. I think, point taken, though, that we want to find ways that people can have more choices and have their voices heard. So
I think sure I understand what you're saying, because in Alaska, I can go in, I'm not voting, I can vote for an unaffiliated person. I can vote for a Republican. If I classify myself, they don't force you as an unaffiliated voter to join a party.
I would rather see the Alaska model, I guess is what I'm saying, than what I think Boyd is trying to. I think the intent is similar to the ranked choice model in terms of opening up the ballot to more people, but I think it is more of letting unaffiliated choose if I'm understanding it right, letting unaffiliated choose which ballot they would use.
You're talking about Boyd's thing.
Boyd's thing.
Boyd just wants to make it elite. I think if I'm going to have him on here pretty soon.
Okay, well, you're let him speak for himself.
I think he would choose. I think he would choose the Alaska model, where it's just complete open primaries like Alaska, where people just
all voters, candidates of all variety. Right. Absolutely.
Look, and that's the other thing, is that I'm an independent. So let's say I'm an independent candidate. I don't have to go through this primary. I have to help you guys go fight it out, spend all your money. I'll just throw myself into the general election. That's the way it works right now. That really shouldn't be allowed either. Everybody should have to run, make your case.
Well, at the end of the day, you're running to represent a constituency. And the way I've always viewed my role, whether it was a delegate, county executive, or member of Congress, is I represent all of Maryland 2nd right now. I don't represent just the Democrats in Maryland 2nd. Now, look, might my voting history and pattern more align with the Democratic sort of party or people who are like, absolutely, that's going to happen. But that doesn't mean that I've secured record funding, I think, for Carroll County and some of the institutions and organizations there, and have spent just as much time in Carroll as I have in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, because I represent Carroll County too. And just because last election cycle, it was 60-40 or whatever the other way against me, I have an obligation to every single resident of Carroll County too. And so if that's our ultimate assignment, shouldn't you have all voters weigh in on who that person is representing them? And I think, to your point, the current, I think ranked choice voting would provide a much better way to ensure that that's the case.
Yeah, we have agreement. I'm hoping,
and we promise. This is live. This was not pre-planned. So
I actually am hoping, because this is bridge into another more thorny issue, because I think most people, when presented with the Alaska model, agree with it, unless you are a hyper partisan. And even some of them agree with what you're saying. Like, how can you tell the fastest growing group of voters that they're not allowed to participate in the democracy?
Well, look at Alaska. Alaska has historically been a Republican represented state, but they have both elected the now Senate candidate, Mary Patola, was a representative from Alaska because of this system.
Right.
I think you have a current Senator Lisa Murkowski, who
very independent,
who compared to her Republican colleagues is super independent. I think like still not moderate enough or independent enough for my liking, but compared to most other Republicans, very independent in the Senate. And I think that the system almost forces her to do that, to be more reflective of the totality of the population.
Right.
And so the fact that Mary and I think that Mary Patola and Murkowski are going to be in a close race again is reflective of, I think, again, the system of voting, where you may have neither one of them have a 50% plurality. So you'll see the other two candidates sort of peel off. And I think, again, whether it's the Democrat or Republican that emerges from that state, the representation will be more reflective overall of the full state.
So maybe, because again, to bridge into something that's thornier, because Maryland is about ready to jump into redistricting, quote unquote, redistricting reform, which I'm not sure I understand why that's reform. I think it's redistricting madness, in my opinion. I understand it because the rest of the country's jumped into redistricting madness too. It's like we talked about, a race to the bottom. Maybe if they plan on doing this, this should be part of what they talk about, instead of just doing whatever redistricting they're talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the time to change our systems and at least think, if you're gonna go through this whole craziness of redistricting in the state, this is the time to switch our system up. Bill Ferguson.
I'll leave that to the state legislature. But what I will say, and we did talk about this before we started, is that this is absolutely a race to the bottom. And I do blame President Trump. He started it with Texas to go find me some more seats. California responded in kind with Gavin Newsom. And now you've seen it tit for tat all over the country. We've seen it get worse post-Calais decision from the Supreme Court, which was awful. Part of why I have a term limit bill for 18-year term limits for the Supreme Court. I think it's time that they have a code of ethics and start cycling out a little bit. I do support term limits for members of Congress too, just for the record. But it is a race to the bottom. I don't like the response, but I certainly understand it in Maryland and in other states. But what I'll say is this, is if Democrats who scream every time Republicans do it, and if Republicans who scream every time Democrats do it got together, especially at the federal level, like this is crying out for federal reform.
For sure.
Like for sure, we could end the madness if we all just came together. I'll say, it will be on Democrats if we take the majority back to actually prove that we mean it.
They're not going to.
But I can say like we don't have the gavels now, and I'm not seeing any action. So it's sort of, it is frustrating though to hear everyone complain about it and then no one. So I'm on a discharge petition that would end mid-decade redistricting and require some nonpartisan across the country.
That'd be great.
But
what are the chances of that actually happening?
Unlikely. I'll never say impossible, but it is so disheartening to hear some of my colleagues go out there and scream about it. Again, Republicans are screaming about Democratic states, Democrats are screaming about, but no one, or not all of them, are then willing to take that next step, say, okay, well, we can do something about this, and pass federal legislation, which, if this moment doesn't prove the need for national reform, I don't think anything does.
It's really, I was so proud of our state. I really was proud to watch Bill Ferguson, who he sat behind me. He was like the young vice chair of budget and tax when I was chairing JPR, and he's such a smart guy. And so, just smart and passionate and really wanted to learn. Like he's more progressive-y than I ever was, but like he was so substantive. And I was really proud of the way he, despite the fact that he was getting tremendous pressure, was saying, no, this is not the right thing to do. And he had legal reasons, which I think were right. I think
you're seeing that as part of why the constitutional special session's coming up, sort of proving right what we saw in Virginia, where I think it's very likely Maryland would have had a similar outcome, but for a constitutional change.
But it's also like not the right thing to do, right? And it's just to so blatantly say, okay, there's a Republican, we're going to get rid of them. When a quarter of the state are Republicans, we're going to get rid of all Republican representation. And then when asked, well, how's that fair? They say, well, look at that state or that state or that state. So like you said, it's a race.
It becomes that whataboutism and a race to the bottom. Yeah.
Right. And it's just, it would be nice to see the Congress come together and say, you know what, enough. We're gonna come together on something bipartisan and moderate and independent commission. Larry Hogan tried to do it in Maryland.
I bet you that's an 80% issue. If you polled Americans, redistricting reform would be 80%.
Right.
Something that Americans support.
Right.
Irrespective of party.
Well, good luck with it. Who's leading that? Who's leading that charge?
There are a couple bills in. I don't have all of the names off the cuff, but I know that I'm on several bills. I'm on a discharge petition for one. I think it's hard because no one actually wants to. I mean, look, here's what I'll say. Republicans know that they are net positive under the recent scenario of reforms.
Is that right?
Of the changes that have happened in states. I think that there is a world in which you could see after this election cycle, Maryland, New York, California go at it again. You could see some other states sort of consider it, and then I think then it will sort of swing back. But then it becomes like, well, if Democrats are in power, it's sort of that same imperative. But for me, it shouldn't change based on who's benefiting or who's in power. The question should be, is it the right thing to do?
I mean, how does this work? Like all of a sudden, if all of a sudden the Maryland general, they go and they redistrict Maryland and they get rid of Andy Harris, and now you have 8-0, and somehow there's a tidal wave and the Republicans take over the General Assembly and the governorship in the next election. So what, they can just go and make it 8-0 Republicans if they can figure it out, and it just goes back and forth and back and forth and back. And so in a state like Wisconsin or others that are more closely.
Yeah.
So just depending on who wins the election, you can just kind of get rid of all the Congress. Is that how the system's going to work?
I think that will be possible in most states, and it's not
insanity.
helpful for democracy, which is again why we need national standards, national reform, and some semblance of standards that make it really about communities of interest, so that we're not splitting up cities, and that we're not splitting up communities of interest. We're not marginalizing racial communities. I mean, the same argument you can make about Andy Harris in Maryland, you can make about African American populations in southern states, where they're now taking it in a similar fashion of eliminating those seats. And so, again, I think it all screams for national reform. And I know for me, and I find myself saying this a lot, I speak for this Democrat, but for me, I will keep beating the drum on the need for national reform, not just there, but certainly in this space, because it is timely, and I don't think it's an issue that's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch topics. I guess it's along the same lines. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our party for a second, because to say I'm disheartened and concerned would be a gross understatement. As somebody who spoke at the Democratic, I was president of the Young Democrats, spoke at the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah.
Consider myself a good Democrat, whatever the hell that means, for a long time. I am looking at some of these races around the country, and some of these, particularly these so-called democratic socialists of America. I would just say that you should get rid of the Democratic part of it, because it's just socialists in America. I saw an interview yesterday on Fox with the head of these socialists. I mean, this is the person who's like the chair of their party, vice chair of their party. And they asked him point blank, here's your platform. Do you agree with these things, yes or no?
Yeah.
So let me just read, and these are some congressmen and congresswomen that are allegedly coming into Congress after these elections. They want to abolish the United States Senate. They want to abolish the presidency and the Supreme Court. They want to abolish all borders. They want to get rid of prisons. They want to get rid of ICE. They want to have government takeover of all corporations. Seriously? I don't understand how these people, first of all, I mean, we talked about how they get elected, because 12 people show up in a primary and you get your buddies to show up, and that's how you get it, because nobody else shows up for the primary. That we can deal with. But these folks are coming to Congress. I mean, and by the way, a couple of them are like supporters of Hamas and other terrorist organizations. They're not just critical of different policies. They're literal supporters of terrorists. How are these folks going to be allowed to be in a Democratic in a Democratic caucus?
I'm not familiar with the specific rules of how the caucus works in terms of entry versus not, but what I can tell you is I think we need to call out and reject extremism wherever we see it. And, we were talking pre-show that I completely reject and will stand against anyone who says things like America deserved 9/11. It is a reprehensible thing to say and to believe that any nation deserves something like that. I think that we are going to have some very hard conversations about what we stand for as a party. And, these will be voices now that ostensibly will be part of the caucus. In general, I believe in being a big tent, but I also think that we have to be clear about where our values allow us to go. And if we are talking about things that are completely out of bounds, then we have to be willing to draw lines, I think, in those conversations. And so I guess we're to be determined how all that goes as people are getting elected and we're sort of organizing for the next cycle. But
I guess I don't get it. Like if like I've said this story before, like I don't know, I'm dating myself by always talking about this one story, but David Duke, remember that guy?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, KKK grandmaster, bigot, racist, one of the most horrifying people to ever run for office in modern American politics. And he won he ran for governor of Louisiana and for senator, and he won the nomination.
Yeah.
And particularly in the Senate race, I mean, he didn't win either one, but in the Senate race, George Bush the father, who was president at the time, Bob Dole, and all these guys, they didn't just reject him and say, we're going to have cover. They endorsed the Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we can't have this for America. Forget about what the letter is next to their name.
100%. And I think that, again, like where we see that, we have to be willing to do that. And I think you look at what happened with Graham Plattner, for example, and we have to have that same kind of moral clarity around not just rape and sexual assault, but around issues of anti-Semitism or people who are racist or bigoted in any sort of way. If people are saying things that are so far beyond or standing for things that are so far beyond, we have to be in a place. I think we take those case by case, David Duke or whatever, but absolutely. I mean, I think that we have to be willing to support people who are decent and care about sort of that common cause of finding a way together. And I don't think divisive or vitriolic rhetoric and positions helps us get there.
I don't know. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to talk. But Graham Plattner is a great example. I mean, months before he ended up being discarded by the Democratic Party, I wrote an editorial, and lots of people, I'm not some specialty, like lots of people were saying, this guy's got a Nazi tattoo on his chest. That's enough. But that wasn't enough for, you don't have to, I'll just say this myself, that wasn't enough for Van Hollen. That wasn't enough for my good friend Jamie Raskin. To the contrary. Like, definitely wasn't enough for Elizabeth Warren, who said that, he was her kind of a man.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't enough that he was an anti-Semite. It wasn't enough that he had, all these crazy things on Reddit. It only, they found their morality only when the 900th thing came out, and it was a rape allegation. Yes, that was horrifying. But like, it should never have taken that long.
Yep. Just as it shouldn't take someone being convicted of sexual assault, the President of the United States. I mean, and again, this is not about whataboutism, because I think I have an obligation, at least, and again, I try to just speak for me as best I can, to call all of it out and to say it's all wrong. And I wasn't out there racing to defend.
I know you weren't. No, I'm just talking,
No, of course. But I think that we need to get better as a culture and society of calling it all out. I mean, not to dwell on the president, but he is the president, right? He has been he's been found guilty of sexual assault. He has, by his own admission, made billions of dollars off of the American taxpayer. He has firms that are now selling presidential pardons. It is things that he's bragging about that, and I think J.D. Vance said it, makes Watergate seem like nothing. So as a society, because I think this has to transcend partisanship, we need to do a better job of calling out the concerns about Graham Plattner immediately, in the same way we need to do a better job of holding.
I think everybody
leader
needs to
accountable.
hold each other accountable.
100%.
Like for, I you know, as a Democrat, I see it on the Democratic side and the Republican side. And it's, you know.
Well, and the worst part is people are tired of hypocrisy, right? They don't like, to your point, like, why would you defend someone so far that it takes the 15th thing before you say that's enough? But on the same token, why is it not that we can't do the same standard for the most powerful man? You would think that actually the standard would be higher for someone in that role. But again, it's what we said earlier, I think it all feeds into this mistrust, this anger with, this frustration, these low approval ratings for Congress, for the president, and it has led to this just partisanship. And again, not to bring it back, but to sort of come full circle, it's why these conversations are so important, so we can actually find a way through, cut through that noise, to start having that consistency of calling people out, finding those solutions that make sense, and ultimately building a better country.
Like I said, we need 435 of you, or maybe one of 100. I'm just saying, but we'll move on. Not for long though. We will move on for a little while. So let me just ask you this: like, moving on from some of the more controversial stuff, I want to talk about you. You've only been there for a couple of years, but you were, I think, everyone would agree, a very effective county executive, very effective legislator. A lot of the reason why I believe was because you had tremendous relationships across the aisle with the executive branch, when you were the executive, with the council and so forth. I'm sure you are doing the same in your just few short years in Congress. What are you working on? What are you hoping to work on? Tell me what some of the, I know you did some things in housing, which you mentioned, but tell me about some of the things you're working on down there.
For sure. So I mentioned this briefly, but proud that I've passed 2 workforce bills with Roger Williams, the chair of small business, which I serve on.
Can you tell us specifically what they do?
It's all about connecting recent graduates to those apprenticeship opportunities and some of the workforce stuff that's out there. Another one sort of just strengthens the workforce pipeline. That's waiting in the Senate for passage. The housing bill is the Reside Act, which is, again, a bipartisan bill that passed as part of the larger housing package that the president didn't sign but became law.
It did become law.
So it's law.
Okay.
It's a grant program, and this was sort of born out from my experiences as county executive. How do we create more housing? The best way to lower housing costs is to create more housing stock. And so as commerce has changed and as industrial patterns have changed, this is a bill that would put grants into the hands of local and state governments to convert commercial and industrial buildings into new residential units. So really excited about that. And I'd say just more generally,
government owned and run, or is this
it can be
housing?
it will go
housing?
to local governments to be used either as part of one of their projects or in partnership with the private sector. When I was county executive, we partnered with people like Dave Bramble to do the largest housing deal in Baltimore County history, because I believe in leveraging the power of the private sector. There are no requirements. This is just about more housing stock generation. So the grants do not have particular ties or requirements relative to attainable housing, though local governments may have some of their own requirements as they work with people. That's something that would be up to them. And I would just say more generally, I'm really focused on costs. The cost of living is crushing Americans. It is the number one issue I hear from people. And you have a president who promised to lower costs on day one, but we see tariffs driving up costs. We see a war with Iran that I just can't get square answers from this president, honestly. That's driving up costs in the grocery store and at the gas station. We see cuts to healthcare and food supports. And we know that collectively, 99% of Americans are paying more than they were when President Trump took office, if you take into account all of the changes that have been made. And so finding ways to provide more housing, to lower healthcare costs, to basically do the bread and butter stuff. Because I think if people can't afford to put food on their table or have a roof over their head, little else matters. Little else matters. I think I had it right the first time. Little else matters. And so that's sort of been a real driving force. And then also these just the rampant corruption. And it's not just the president trading on stocks, doing 20,000 stock trades, or his cryptocurrency venture, or the pardons, or the jet from Qatar. I mean, like, the list goes on and on. But it's also holding ourselves to a higher standard as members of Congress. So I don't trade stocks as a member. I think we should ban trading completely by members and immediate family members, because we are privy to information that the average American won't get, if not at all, certainly sooner in many cases. And I think that Democrats in particular should be clear and forceful on this issue, so that we have the credibility. Because I think it goes back to the whataboutism, right? People say, well, what about the members who trade stocks? And to be able to say clearly, I think that's wrong too. I don't do it. I think we should end it. It just changes the conversation versus if I were to have gotten rich off of trading while as a member, right, how then do you have credibility criticizing it? It just makes it harder, right? And so issues of cost and corruption, just sort of the general structure.
Can I ask you a question about costs?
Yeah.
So your housing bill, that's a very specific way of lowering costs, and a really good, I had read about your bill and what you were doing and so forth as you were doing it. I think often I hear people talking in generalities about cost. Mm-hmm. You're actually doing something, but like, they say, well, food costs are up, or healthcare costs are up. And we've been talking about healthcare since I first knew that politics existed. What are the specific ways? I'm not sure. I mean, we could get into a long conversation about the Iran war, which I actually, even though I agree with you, I don't think that the president has had a particularly, it's kind of in and out and in and out and in and out, versus having a clear, pathway. I believe it's the right thing to be doing right now, because we're going to fight this war at some point in time. Like, this seems to have been the moment to take these guys out and to get something new for a better Middle East. I don't know if that's what this president is doing.
See, I don't know if he's taking him out, and
I don't know what that's my problem.
Sure.
Because I agree with you. I'm not sure that there's a clear pathway. They keep kind of switching the goalposts on it. Whereas I wish we had a Bill Clinton or a George Bush, quite frankly, or Ronald, somebody who had more clear objectives, and this is what we're doing. I thought that there was a moment when we could have, like, if you could cut the head off of this snake, I think that you will see much, it's one of those things that there's so many problems, not just in the Middle East, but in the world, because of Iran, with Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas, and I mean, it's just constant turmoil there because of Iran and Iraq. I mean, all these things, there's one big head of a snake. And I thought for a moment that we were gonna get in there and do something different and just get unite the world to get rid of this thing for once and for all.
And I'll say, if Trump had clear objectives, if he had leveled with the American people, or at least leveled with Congress about how he was going to do it, even if things got thrown off course, the problem is he is a pathological liar when he does tell us. And in this case, he didn't really share any information, even though Congress has the authority to declare war. And so I don't necessarily disagree in terms of the threat that Iran posed and potentially the opportunity, but that intelligence wasn't shared, that strategy wasn't shared. And in the meantime, Americans are feeling it. We've lost service members, we're paying more, we've spent tens of billions of dollars. And so I think it just goes back to, I think we're, again, where we started, like how we interact with each other and how we govern matters. And so trying to find that consensus and that common ground and operating in good faith and in sharing sort of what we're doing. One of the best things I did as county executive was to put the budget sort of out there to the public and be like, here are literally the line items. Like, let's talk about what the priorities are and how we can do that together. And I think if not just this president, but in general and how we interact were more transparent and good faith, the outcomes would be so much better. And that's the kind of politics that I'm fighting for in my almost 2 years, first term here in the United States Congress.
All right. Well, I know that we have to wrap up. We have so much more to talk about. I hope you'll come back sometime. This has been
great. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
We could do this forever. And I just want to say, as somebody who's served with you, who supported you, and been honored to have you as my county executive and now as my congressman, I just want to say, I mean it when I say, because I'm more than happy to criticize whoever from any party. I truly believe that if we had, 435 of you, we would be in a hell of a lot better place than we're sitting right now. And I hope that at least some of these things that you're talking about will come to fruition. It feels like we're so much further away from that than we were when we first got into here as 20-somethings in office.
I am honored by you saying that. I have a lot of appreciation and respect for our time together. And again, thanks for having these conversations and trying to move these issues forward.
I appreciate your time. So again, for Across the Aisle, I am Senator Bobby Zirkin. This is Congressman Johnny Olszewski. Appreciate you here.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Thanks, man.